Alright everyone, we've let the mask dry a little bit, and you can kind of see that it's going from this dark wet look to like a very light tanned hide, like the dried leather look. It'll come back to more of like this type of color. You can see this dark material, and you can see here around the eyes it's starting to come back closer to the original color. And it's pretty simple. I'm gonna talk less in this portion and really show you more. This would be the time like you want to go back with your X-Acto knife, and if you have any like little extra pieces like here in the eyes, you would want to trim those areas out like such. And then these little fine areas where you really want to get into, the Dremel can really clean this up a lot if you put on just one of those grit bits, which we might need to do, we might not, so hopefully we will. And I kind of decide on the nose piece whether I'm going to keep it this or if I'm going to do it as a ridge mount, which will be more something to this extent where I fold back the leather and give a ridge mount versus having an actual peak nose. And I kind of decide that at the end. Once the mask is dry enough, I take it off the form, I put it to my face, I check it in the mirror, I try to see what I like. And ideally what we're going to do here is I'm going to try and make a time-lapse video because I go way over on the time when I'm talking. So kind of here you can see that I've already started, and I'm going to not be able to talk over the hairdryer, but what I want to do is, this has already started to dry, this has been stapled onto the face form, so now I'm going to start, these pieces are starting to get pretty dry. I want to kind of start to shape these by hand, and I do all kinds of like funky things. You see all this junk up here. Once I get it a good shape, I try to give each one its stationary level, somewhere it can sit, and finish the drying process. And that probably will be overnight. Sometimes I get impatient and I try to dry it totally in one night and then maybe airbrush it the next day because there's still some moisture left in the leather. But ideally that's what I'll type of do here is I'll give different layers, and once I actually give it the wave look, this will sit better. But ideally all these, you're going to see me, I'm going to try and make these as like a big wave, and it'll be almost as it's being windswept or ocean swept across the top. And then you'll see us seal it with the color, seal it with a sealant, and that's really, it's that easy. I'll punch some holes, I'll put some elastic strap for the head, and then we'll have a leather mask. And we'll go into more complicated stuff like adding details. We can put some jewelry on this one and maybe punch some holes and put some metal on it, and I'll show you the type of things that we can do. Alright, so less talking and more shaping. You have to be careful with your fingers. Obviously it can get pretty hot, I'm used to it, but I still tend to burn myself a little bit. And I'm going to start using these already. So as these are really dry, I can already start to shape and lay it over. And one of the best things to do is try to hide the edges, because it really gives it a clean look from the front. So also, using some of these tools here, you didn't get to see it, but as I was drying, I do a couple things here. When I'm drying the actual face form, this is why I like the face form, because I'm actually pushing, shaping the brows, shaping the sides, and then I'm really giving the nose a hand indentation. These are your best shaping tools, especially with the leather masks. So as you're coming in here, I think that nose is going to go away. I like it less and less as I'm working. And this side is still very wet, so you can actually get in there and give it a good shape. If you want to give it a really, really good permanent shape, a lot of times what you can do is here is you're pushing almost into it and kind of smoothing it out. You don't want to leave a lot of indentations because that'll show through your spray painting. And then just come back here and smooth it out with your finger, and that'll be pretty permanent. And I don't know if that'll come out in the camera, but you can see that there's almost like a ridge line here starting from the putty tool. And the same thing, we can add all kinds of lines and textures that'll show through. I like these little dashes here, they remind me of something. And then again, this will give you texture under the spray paint or whatever type of color. There's lots of leather paints that I'll show you that also can be applied by hand. They just don't give you a totally smooth look as compared to airbrush. So don't forget your little tools, best tools you have, props, and just start to shape these. Kind of like that. So if you guys can see, we're already starting to get our shape for our mask here. I like it to be a little loud. I also want to show you a neat trick. If you like to give things, I like to give, especially if I'm making like a flame mask, this is a great tool for under the leather, and you can just simply give it ridge lines from underneath, and it becomes pretty permanent. You can see the line here already. So if you keep doing that and doing that over in the leather underneath, it takes a little bit of work. You can create really defined ridge lines. You can do it under the leather mask, anything to that extent. So I'm kind of happy with the way those look now. Now again, if I have something this tall under the mask, and this is where I ridge it and dry it, that's where they're going to pretty much stay. They say you can re-wet these and, you know, relax it, but I noticed that doesn't work really good with the leather masks once they've set in the glue. So I'm going to set these here pretty close to each other. Looks like we need another one. Let's use this here. No, that's a little tall. Let's use my Cuba shot glass. Alright. Alright, as you can see, we've dried it pretty good. It stands up on its own, and if you're watching through the speed video portion of it, I was adding details, and if you can see these will show through the spray paint, so it just gives it a little extra layer and texture underneath the paint. And then what we'll do is, more than likely, these will be accented with offset colors when we go back and paint it. And these are still a little wet because they're not totally white yet. Not like this here. These are the type of colors you want to try and get, is this really light tan. And if you look under here, you can still see that it's a little light, but it's good to go. It's pretty stiff, so we let that dry a little bit longer, possibly overnight. Then tomorrow we'll go back and we'll punch holes. We'll airbrush it, base coat black, and then go back and add lighter colors, or we'll just base coat black the face. We'll add the details. I'm thinking something fiery red or something to that extent. The mask was intended to be a little more on the feminine side, but like all art, it evolves to be what it wants to be, and it's definitely a masculine mask, especially with the detail work here and these things here. But maybe after we spray paint it, it'll look more like I had intended. But the mask always becomes what it wants to be, in my opinion. The leather was something that's living, is still something that's living, so it definitely takes its own shape. So we'll go back, we'll clean this up a little bit. But it's pretty much done. I like to let it sit overnight and make sure that the rest of the moisture that's in the mask does dry out, and I'll leave it here on these forms here. And then tomorrow we'll peel it off, and we'll start working with the rest of the painting and stuff. I'll probably actually more than likely airbrush it on here, but I like to remove the staples because it does leave a mark. And that should be part 2. So we'll have part 3, maybe a part 4, and then you'll know how to make leather masks. And I'm sure we'll do other ones over time together. Thanks.